day not knowing who I'm going to meet, it makes a big difference. I just, I show respect for the entrepreneurs. I have if anybody's from Japan or Korea or whatever, they all wear ties.
Exactly. So, well,
New York City, they all wear ties.
I know it's very standard in London. So, first of all, I'm Yusuf Khan. I'm a general partner at Ridge Ventures. Like many of the people who are on this, they were aspiring founders. Some are founders. Some are, VCs and aspiring VCs. I was one of those. Before this was organized and it was announced that I volunteered to host because I had more people reach out to me to say that they've met you and they sent me a photo of you wearing your previous tie before you invested in Bitcoin. And then I remember
the Save the Children ties, the ones that Save the Children.
I believe it was that one. And then I remember I met you. You spoke at an event, and I had the same. So I was like, okay, I've met him, and now I'm going to interview him. So this is great. So let's kick off. First of all, in terms of the audience, we've got a number of people who are aspiring founders. We also have a number of VCs and investors. You can provide advice and guidance, I would say wisdom as well, across and sharing your experiences. So let's start at the top a little bit. First and foremost is you were, I think, at the forefront of a lot of global investing when it came to venture. I remember when I was following DFJ, you had set up in Southeast Asia, you led investments in Focus Media, in Baidu, you had venture funds set up from Vietnam and India and otherwise, way ahead of the curve. It's only now that a lot of these ecosystems are. So I guess let's maybe start up. How did you think about global investing then when it wasn't really a thing at all, especially when it comes to venture as an asset class?
Well, actually, it was odd even to invest outside of Silicon Valley and Route 128. Back then, it was a strange thing, but I recognized that Microsoft had started in Redmond, Washington, and Dell Computer had started in Austin, Texas, and Gateway Computer had started in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. And I thought, wow, we're in the Silicon Valley, but it doesn't have to be here. And no one's out there. And so I decided I would pioneer. And I would go out there and be the guy with the arrows in my back. But I would, and I knew that venture capital, I grew up in the Silicon Valley with my dad being a venture capitalist, my grandfather being the first venture capitalist in the Silicon Valley. Yeah. My dad really was a pioneer in the Silicon Valley. And I thought, well, this can be done anywhere. And I watched what it did for our economy. We went from being the poor relations to our cousins in Pittsburgh to being the rich relations. And I thought, well, and it wasn't just us, it was everybody around us. And there was construction going on, and there was dynamism, and new software companies were being built all the time. And I thought, wow, that's really great. It did amazing things for our economy. Sorry, that eyebrow just never goes down.
Trademark.
It is a trademark. And actually, the barber always says, well, do you want me to cut that eyebrow? And I said, well, it's kind of a brand. So I went out and I thought I could, why don't I start other places in the US? And I set up a network of venture capitalists. And then I thought it would be a hub and spokes where I would be the center of it. And then, but it ended up all the spokes connected with each other too, and they all benefited from that. And then we started to think internationally. We ran into these two guys who really wanted to take our brand internationally, and they were very ambitious. And I thought, wow, that's exciting. And so I ended up it helped me because I ended up traveling the world looking at entrepreneurs. So I got to see countries I never would have possibly seen by setting up venture funds in different parts of the world. And we hit it just about right, raising a large international fund in 1999 before the big crash. And having that money really did pay off, and it allowed us to find companies like Baidu and Skype.
Well, let me ask you
So
about
we were first in China, first Silicon Valley venture capitalists in China, and first Silicon Valley venture capitalists in Eastern Europe. And I think we were the first, but if not, we were the first certainly to fund a unicorn in Eastern Europe.
And your dad, with respect, Draper Richards was set up in India, and there was a number of investments there as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, Dad. Well, I'll give you my dad's career. He was, he started out. He spent 1 year or 2 years working with his dad, and at Draper, Gaither and Anderson. Then he spun off with Pitch Johnson, and they started an SBIC, a small business investment company, and that did well-ish. And then he started Sutter Hill, and that became a real machine. And then he went off to Washington. He was the chairman of the Export-Import Bank, and then he went to become the administrator of UNDP, which is the highest ranking American in the UN. And when he did that, he started to see really interesting opportunities. And when he went back to the private sector, he decided he'd start Draper International with Robin Richards. And he was trying to figure out where he would start. And he decided India because a lot of them speak English in India. And so he was the first venture capitalist in India. And that was actually after I had pioneered the work in Eastern Europe and in China.
Amazing in terms of geographies. And there's a parallel to a lot of the audience and founders in Pakistan. And I guess it would be maybe a little bit of advice first. You went out and raised money in emerging markets, in emerging asset class in the 90s. I'm sure that there were a bunch of investors who may have laughed you off and said, no way, we're not investing, etc. And you start to see a lot of geopolitical issues and macroeconomic issues across, whether it's Latin America, Southeast Asia, even Eastern Europe or otherwise. Yet there is still, I mean, that's geopolitical and macro issues, but you were investing at a time when it was like literally ground zero at a number of these geographies. What was the message from a vision standpoint that founders, as well as aspiring kind of international managers, should take away from how you were able to basically position that investment strategy for people to invest?
I had one geopolitical thing at my back, and that was the internet. We had, and let me explain. The internet actually created freedom throughout the world and allowed geographic borders to collapse. They were starting to collapse, and we were all better off, and we were all building our economies with that freedom. And I was just the tip of the spear for that freedom that they were all looking for. And they were all saying, yeah, we want this. And we always wanted local partners and local money when we set up a new venture fund in a new place. And the local partners, for obvious reasons, because they would know the families of the entrepreneurs that would come and try to start businesses. And the local money, because we wanted to be aligned with the law of the land, so that we would be treated the same way as the local money would. It was so in some ways, yes, it was difficult because it was unique, but it was fun for me. I got to go to all these new places and meet all these wonderful new people with different cultures and different ways of looking at the world. But entrepreneurs in all those places had the similarities that the great entrepreneurs were looking for ways to transform and improve the world around them. And that and so geopolitically, we were in that period of freedom. Now, weak leaders have created more of a control environment where they're wanting to watch everybody and tell everybody what to do and whatever, and that usually shrinks the economy, shrinks the global economy. And I think starting that now would have been a lot tougher.
Right.
So I did actually have the wind at my back when I did it. Geopolitically, I had because free countries create economic opportunity and is really good for entrepreneurs, and control countries, whether they be dictatorship or socialism or communism, whatever, they go flatline. They have horrible economies, and new entrepreneurs, new ideas get smothered in a control environment. So I actually think that that may have been a very special time, and I think that all these control freak leaders that we have are going to go through a period, because what happened, here's my theory. What happened was the internet opened everybody up and we were all able to communicate. We all learned the same thing. We were all learning. Everything was great. And then Bitcoin came along and it was like, hey, and now we've got a currency we can all use.
Right.
And the government said, whoa, 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 I like controlling my people with my currency. And they got very nervous. And so they put up all these barriers and they started to create animosity amongst country leaders, and put up walls and put up trade wars and whatever else. And I think there will be a time, maybe 10, 15 years from now, where we go back to that freedom throughout the land. And I think it's going to be really healthy. And the world economy will grow much faster and poverty will be lifted out. I think we're going to have a really great, this world is going to be extraordinary in about 15 years when they embrace Bitcoin, when they realize that these geographic borders are meaningless. But for now, we're going through a very difficult time.
You've seen plenty of shifts in the industry, both globally, from an investing standpoint, technological, otherwise. Let's talk a little bit about the founder stories, because you invested early in Elon Musk and his companies. Of course, Hotmail was huge. So I want to just talk a little bit. A lot of founders who want to basically think about this, and you're still, investing, and you've been a multi-generational family with, I think probably the only one which actually has venture capital in the DNA. I actually tried to check. I didn't.
Yeah, I have three children who are venture capitalists right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the question is, have you seen a common trend in the decades that you've been investing when it comes to outlier founders, and you're like, that, I'm going to be backing this individual, as crazy as it sounds or crazy as the vision is? Like, are there one or two core things that always stand out to you when you speak to founders or have spoken to founders in the past?
Yeah, a quiet confidence inside of them, but it comes bursting out of their chest when you ask them why are they doing it. I think it's a quiet confidence, meaning they know what they're doing. They know where they're headed. They know what has to be done. They have to have a little flexibility of mind, because it doesn't always go on a straight line. In fact, never does. In fact, all of our greatest entrepreneurs were pivots. Every single one pivoted at some point or another. It was a different business, and then it changed and it became what it was. Hotmail had two pivots. There were a number of companies had different pivots. Hotmail started, they came to us just with, they were going to help people make their own websites. And then they were leaving our office and they said, well, we do have another idea, and it's free web-based email. And then they did that. And
Right.
then they didn't know how they were going to spread it. And I said, well, I came up with that idea for viral marketing. And so it's, I said, put a PS, I love you, get your free email at Hotmail at the bottom of everybody's email. And they didn't like the idea at the time, but eventually they came around and they got rid of the PS, I love you. We would have had a much more peaceful and loving world.
Yeah, I think you would have contributed a little bit more if that was the case.
But it spread to 11 million users in 18 months. One email was sent to, the founder was Indian, and one email was sent to India. And within 3 weeks, we had 100,000 registered Hotmail users in India. And there were not even 100,000 computers in India at that time.
Right.
So all of a sudden, the world was opening up. Everybody was able to communicate. It was going to be it was a huge impact on the world.
And was it the case with those founders, whether it was Hotmail or Baidu or others, the same thing, quiet confidence, but a lot of energy about why they were doing it, what they were looking to solve? Is that fair?
Yeah. And in that case, the founder, Sabir Bhatia, was the promoter, and he did have a confidence about him that it made you feel like whatever he was going to do was amazing. And Jack Smith was the founding engineer, and he felt like he could build whatever.
Right.
He was able to build whatever. He had that confidence. So they were kind of a nice combo. When we funded Tesla, it was just one guy. It was Martin Eberhard.
That's right.
And Elon was brought in later. We actually tried to fund Elon with his first effort at X.com, which became PayPal. And he got a better offer from another corporate venture group that time, but we kept an eye on him. And then with SpaceX, that was a little controversial, because he was already running Tesla, and it was a public company, and and we were gonna support him in his hobby, but that he really is an extraordinary guy. And if you want to be an entrepreneur, you got to get the one done first, and if that becomes worth $1 trillion, then you can go ahead and start another one.
Well, when you think about Tesla went through a whole bunch of issues. You mentioned pivots as well.
They started out using the Lotus shell.
Right, Lotus, and they had to refactor that entirely, as I read correctly. And so I guess the question is, you have a lot of founders who are literally, with the shift to AI, of course, number one, regulations or downturn in economy. Is there a level of kind of grit or some other aspect that you look for a founder, or what advice do you give to founders because you've gone through multiple economic cycles and you've been in companies, I'm sure, at board meetings where you're probably running out of cash or they worry about the next fundraise. Any general advice that you could offer to those founders who are going through this journey right now?
Yeah. Ask yourself, why am I doing this? Because if you ask yourself that, then it won't matter where the money is. And when times are really tough and you start having to lay off people and some of the best creative ideas come at those times. You're struggling, you're fighting, you're whatever, you're out of cash, you have difficult time. And then you kind of say, well, there was that one customer who wanted this. And you say, oh, well, maybe we just do that. And that moment often is the difference between a company that really makes it or dies. There is another thing that happens, which is wild, because entrepreneurs are impatient. And they say, well, God, I made it and it's here. and the customers are just sniffing around and nothing's happening. Well, it takes a long time for a corporate customer to bite. It doesn't take long for a consumer, but for a corporate customer to bite. So when they finally bite, it's often 6 months after you close your shop.
Right.
So what you've got to survive. And so what I always say is, when people say, yeah, we're going to ramp up before they've even got a customer product fit, that's a big mistake. You want to keep a very small engineering team, core engineering team, keep them alive as long as you possibly can. And then when you start having customers and they are demanding this and that and this and that, and they're willing to pay for those demands, that's when you can scale up. But before that, even if you get a ton of money from a venture capitalist, and sometimes that happens, you get it at the wrong times, turn it into a war chest. Don't spend it.
Right.
Until you have a perfect product market fit and you know that $1 down turns into $5 later. So yeah, I think it has to do with, a confidence in yourself that you're doing something really important and you're doing the right thing. You've only got one life and you really want to make an impact. And then the persistence to go through knowing that this is not going to be a straight line. You are going to go through all sorts of fits and starts, and you'll run out of money, and you'll do so many things. And then the worst thing that can happen to you is one of these growth venture capitalists giving you too much money.
What did you make of that? We saw these crazy valuations happen over the course of the last several years and a massive correction, reduction in the number of funds being raised in 2022, 2023. I would say crazy level of valuations where companies weren't able to grow into those. I
almost feel like they've killed as many as they've helped. The big, huge funds. If some entrepreneurs out there and they're starting to grow their business and they're saying, okay, we need $5 to $10 million, and a big funder comes in there and says, we'll give you $100 million, so you grab the whole market. You stop getting creative, you stop thinking organically, and you start thinking, oh, I can just throw money at the problem.
Right.
And then your burn rate goes up, and you're just thinking, well, that money's just going to keep coming. Of course, I've got this great vision, everything's great, and and then 2023 happens in 2022, and all of a sudden they've frozen their checkbooks, and they are out of money, and they are not getting more money from investors, and you've got a burn rate of $2 million a month. And you're about to hit the wall because you got $6 million left in the bank. What do you do? And I remember this happening in the .com era where some entrepreneur, I said, well, so how many employees do you have? And they said 400. And I said, well, you got to cut that to 3. And he goes, 300? And I said, no, 3 employees.
Okay.
And the ones who did hung in there, and they were alive to live another day. The ones who didn't, it was 3 months and they were gone.
Wow. Yeah. Lots of areas. Let's shift focus a little bit. When did you get into crypto? Number one. Number two is clearly, I read, and maybe you can confirm this was some time ago, but you hold a very large asset base on, I think it was a government auction, but correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
And then I think the other aspect is, tell me about the outlook. So there's 3 areas there.
Okay, good.
Let's go into it.
So in 2001, I was talking to this guy from Korea, and he told me that his son, that he had first he told me about this game that all the Koreans were playing. And it was sort of a life simulation kind of thing. I think it was called Legacy or something like that.
Right.
No, that wasn't it. But all the Koreans were playing it, and it was so important to him that he hired a guy to be his avatar while he was at work. And I thought, well, wow, that's, half your life is now in this virtual world. And he goes, yeah. And then he said, and yeah, I bought my son a sword for his birthday. And I said, great. And he said, yeah, I spent $40 on it. I said, oh, that's great. And he goes, no, you don't understand. It's a virtual sword. It's pixels on the screen in this game.
Okay.
And I said, oh. And so that right then I started to think about digital money. And I thought it was going to come from games. I thought the games would, one game would have gold, another game would have points, another game would have diamonds, and then you'd say 40 gold for one diamond and you'd have an exchange rate, and everybody'd have this money, and that would be the virtual money in space. But some genius, Satoshi Nakamoto, figured out a cryptocurrency that so far hasn't been hacked, and knock on wood, and it was open and transparent and global and all the things that you would want a digital currency to be. And I guess it was the end of 2010 or early 2011 that I got wind of it, and I bought. So you could figure it out. I bought some at 4 from a guy, and he said, oh, it was at 6, and he said, well, I can mine it for you and get it for 4. And so he went to mine it for me, but then there were people who front ran it didn't get him his chips to mine,
Right.
And they front ran him, and then he stored it all at Mt. Gox, and Mt. Gox stole the money or whatever happened. I don't know what it was, but
right.
Disappeared the money. And I got almost nothing out of that. I had something like 40,000 Bitcoin there, and I got almost nothing out of it. But I thought that was the end of Bitcoin, and I thought, oh well, whatever. Right. We took a risk, and it was a tough thing, and but Bitcoin only dropped about 10%, 15% on the news that Mt. Gox had stolen, all that money, and the biggest trading system in the whole world for Bitcoin had stolen all this money. And
Tim, I'm going to interrupt and ask you 2 very pointed questions. And look, it's just between friends. Number 1 is, are you Satoshi? Number 2 is, if you're not, is Satoshi in your office? I mean, just reveal it to the world.
No.
Just double check.
And no, Satoshi is a brilliant engineer from somewhere, and he's I don't know who Satoshi is. I have suspicions, but I don't know.
I was just joking.
And so anyway, I was at I started to realize that people really cared about this token, even though it had been stolen. All of this Bitcoin had been stolen.
Right.
And so then I went out and did a really deep dive and realized that people were using it for remittances. They were using it to pay people overseas, in addition to thinking that they could get away with, gun running and all that.
Right.
The criminals turned out all got caught because the blockchain keeps perfect records. So at first, the U.S. Marshal's Office was going, no Bitcoin, and then toward the end, they were going, yeah, go ahead, because we're busting everybody.
Right.
And I realized that we really had a token that was going to be global, that was going to have value wherever you went, and you can move it wherever you went. It didn't have all those restrictions on it, and it was going to create more value, more wealth throughout society. and pull people out of poverty. And there were people unbanked that because banks, they have to fill out so many forms that it's not worth it for them to take on somebody who only has $100. And so this was a way for the rest of the world to be banked, and that was a big deal. And so I thought, well, this is really exciting. I saw how the algorithm worked, and I thought, this is basically going up in value. It will just keep going up in value. And then it's taken on all sorts of fits and starts, of course, like any entrepreneurial venture. And but it's just better currency. It keeps perfect records on the blockchain. You don't need accountant, auditor, bookkeeper. It can all be done there. So I'd love to have a time where I could raise a fund all in Bitcoin, invest it all in Bitcoin, have my entrepreneurs pay their employees and suppliers all in Bitcoin, so that and all the taxes would be paid in Bitcoin, and it would all be automatic, and I wouldn't have to pay all the millions of dollars to my accountants and my legal and transfer agents and bookkeepers and whoever else.
Do you see that growth area in crypto internationally? I mean, there's clearly been fluctuations, pretty heavy fluctuations, and of course there've been, corporate, issues, whether it's FTX or Binance and others. What's your general outlook from your standpoint? It seems clearly you're on the long of it, but just wanted to get an idea if you think about a global imprint for global outlook for these Bitcoin and digital currencies.
So I'll give you a couple of thoughts. First, I look at stable coins as a bridge to Bitcoin. It's like, hey, okay, we can use a digital currency, but it doesn't have it's not decentralized, it's not open, it's still political, it's not international, it's not global, it's national. And so stable coins are going to be a nice, bridge to this. But eventually we're going to get to a place where retailers are saying, hey, I can save 2% just by accepting Bitcoin. The shoppers are going to say, hey, I can buy my food, my clothing, my shelter all in Bitcoin. Why do I want to hold on to these dollars? I can pay my taxes in Bitcoin. Why do I hold on to these dollars that are politically manipulated? Now, there are countries where this is painfully obvious to them, where they would much rather transact in Bitcoin. And those are like Argentina, Nigeria, Argentina until recently. Now we got real hope in Argentina.
Yeah, El Salvador as well, for example.
And El Salvador is, their economy is all kind of running on Bitcoin.
Yeah.
But there are many countries who have hyperinflation. They can never get out of it. Their governments keep spending, so they keep being sucked in, and their fortunes continue to be lost, and there's no trust in the currency. And they're going, Bitcoin, this is important. And so they were the early adopters and have been and will continue to be. And then,
do you think governments are going to tolerate crypto more? Do you think governments are going to actually are waking up to the fact that this should be a key part of the economy?
I think governments have two sides to them. They have hey, this is great for innovation. We're going to really make a big impact on the world. This is going to be great for the consumer, for my constituents, everything. And those are the ones that are saying, yeah, Bitcoin, we got to do something to allow this and allow them to do that. And then there are the governments that are saying, no, I have to control everything. I have a central bank. I want that central bank to continue to control my people. I want to be able to spend money whenever I feel like it. I want to, create inflation in my country if I need to, whatever. And they're against it. So we have these factions. The shame of it for an American is that the U.S., of America. I mean, sometimes they say South Americans are also
I became a
Americans.
citizen only last year, so I'm proud of that. So I will call that. So yeah.
So the shame of it is that in America, we've been the free country and we have had the freedom to innovate. And Silicon Valley, there's no surprise that Silicon Valley has the benefit of being 3,000 miles away from Washington. And they can innovate and they can try stuff and they're the golden goose. And the internet, Bill Clinton was wise enough to say, no, we're not going to tax, we're not going to regulate the internet, we're just going to let it rip until it starts hurting somebody, and then we can step in.
Yeah.
The US probably should have done the same thing with Bitcoin.
Right.
Because now all the innovators say, oh, but we have to geofence the US. So people innovating around Bitcoin in the US are hampered by 80-year-old laws that the SEC put together, and they're trying to shoehorn them in to Bitcoin. They're trying to make 80-year-old laws relevant to today, and they don't make any sense. And they're stifling innovation like crazy. There's so many great innovations,
right?
From airdrops to new forms of DeFi to ways of shopping with Bitcoin, to paying taxes in Bitcoin, to innovating around the blockchain that are not happening in the US because the SEC has been a dark cloud over that industry.
And do you think the same is going to happen with AI as a major technological shift? You've seen multiple platform shifts, Internet 1999. I remember when you spoke at an event that I was at, the iPhone 5 had shown up, and you held it up and said, let me tell you about Steve Jobs being a brilliant entrepreneur, and this has really changed the industry. You've seen now that in crypto. AI, of course, has seen the level of uptake and adoption and kind of mind share that, since kind of November 2022 with the ChatGPT launch has opened up. How do you view that, both from an innovation and excitement standpoint, but also from a government regulation standpoint, because there's both of those conversations happening?
So AI is really exciting. Here's what I'd like to just put into your heads.
Go for it.
Let's say you're in a faculty lounge and there are 10 of you and they're all faculty members. And 2 of you are saying, wow, the admissions office has really improved. These essays are extraordinary. And 6 of you are saying, ChatGPT is killing us. We're going to have to, this is a mess. We've got to ban it. Keep our kids away from it. This is horrible. And 2 of them are saying, wow, somebody just invented the printing press, and we don't have to copy the Bible over and over by hand to make it, now we can just pound these things out. Yeah. And so humans have just taken another anthropological leap forward, and they just don't know it yet. Yeah. And I think AI is just going to be amazing. I think we will have AI around us all the time. We'll be able to say, a guy was talking about string theory. How does that work? And then the AI will talk back to you. Yeah. I was talking to somebody from Nissan Motors, and we were talking about how the car will become sort of your friend, because, when you're driving in a car, you have lots of crazy ideas. And some of those ideas you go, wait, how did that work? How do you make donuts? Those ideas go in your head. Well, you could say, how do you make donuts? And the AI can come back to you and say, hey, this is great. I actually think AI is going to merge with robotics, and we're going to have little drones and robots running around us. And we'll say, oh, God, I left my wallet back at the, movie theater. Will you go get it? And the robot will go get it, or the drone will go pick it up and bring it back. And I think that those kinds of things are going to change our society in a big way. We're going to all benefit from it. Entrepreneurs generally are doing things for the good of society. And when you start hearing about all the horrible things that can happen in AI, sure, but there will be entrepreneurs that solve those too.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I've done a big AI of me, and we're just watermarking it. And so it's going to have its own little characteristic. And by having that, it will know whether it's me or the AI of me that's doing whatever it is that I'm doing.
Right.
And it's great. I read one chapter of my book for the AI, and it can read the rest of the chapters, and it sounds just like me. In fact, it can read the rest of the chapters in French or Spanish or Chinese or whatever with my voice. AI is going to be really quite extraordinary. And so I can't wait for all the innovations to happen. We're funding a lot of companies that are doing interesting things with AI. AI is like, can create, a better bureaucrat. AI can create a better lawyer. AI can really help me in my job.
The productivity uplift from what the opportunities are huge, and I think that excites me, at least as an investor, to see companies where it's making a change in enterprise. I want to be conscious of time. We've got about 15 minutes. A couple of other questions have come up. In terms of where you focus most of your time, would love to just hear, like, what's the Tim Draper update? I would ask Tim Draper versus Draper GPT. So kind of maybe hear it from you if I like where the focus of your time is, number one. And then the other question is some parting advice and some of the lessons in terms of how you built out a team. I want to be specific about that. Forming a team, whether it's a team of partners when it was DFJ, whether it was a founding team of an early stage company. A lot of founders, a lot of aspiring VCs are thinking about that. So those are the two areas. But one is where do you spend most of your time these days? And then second, let's talk about team formation.
So team formation, hire team members only when the wheels are falling off the car. Be very slow to hire. Don't add people just because you think you should be bigger. Just add people when you absolutely need them, and add people who have expertise you don't have, or a different way of looking. If you're a venture capitalist, a different way of looking at investments than you do. I think those would be valuable. Where am I spending my time? Well, as I mentioned, freedom and trust in government are really important to me, and I've seen it all over the world. Governments that trust their people and set them free outperform governments that are control and command based. Where they tell you what to do, what to say, whatever. That tends to be very bad for an economy, for the people. It creates more poverty. A government that is untrustworthy really hurts an economy, because then that untrustworthiness spreads throughout the land. It's amazing how leaders have an impact on a country. If the leader is very trustworthy, that also spreads throughout the land. And trust actually builds economies, pulls people out of poverty. Trust is, like, as George Shultz said, the coin of the realm.
Yeah.
Trust is everything. If you have trust, a huge part of our economy is the verification part of our economy, not the trust part. The trust part's what really grows our economy, and the more we trust each other, the more a contract is valid, the more rule of law matters, all those things, the better an economy does. And so trust is really important. So I'm spending a lot of time to try to get Nikki Haley elected president. Yeah. She is trustworthy. She trusts people. She wants to push decision-making down to the local and state level, so that it's not like one president telling everybody what to do and having them all just march in line the way President Xi is doing in China, or President Putin's trying to do in Russia. Instead, you get a leader who says, look, that's not my decision. That's a decision that should be made at the family level, or the community level, or at the state level, and let those states all compete for you. Let all the states have whatever. she's extraordinary. She's done a great job, and the other two seem to be control-based candidates, and I think we don't want that.
Is it fair, if it's fair to say that trust also needs to be much improved within the institutions of government, in your viewpoint?
Yeah, it starts at the top. If the leader is trustworthy, it moves all the way down through the system. Like the mayor of San Francisco decided that, it was okay if you only stole $900 worth of things, we're not going to do anything to you. All of a sudden, theft was everywhere.
Yeah, it's ridiculous. Yeah.
That woman was absolutely ridiculous. And that was also throughout California, that the governor was ridiculous there. I think that we made huge mistakes there. You got to have, a law that people say, okay, this is the law and this is what we do and this is what we follow. And if the leader follows it, I'm going to follow it too. If the leader doesn't follow it, then, chaos reigns.
A couple of questions have come in, shifting topics, and not just about trusted institutions, but if you think about frontier markets now versus when you were investing, right? The landscape has dramatically changed, whether it's on the geopolitical side. If you take Google Maps and just zoom out and start pointing to countries, it's a pretty busy and kind of a fractured neighborhood, from Argentina's kind of inflationary crisis right down to coups in Ecuador and Bolivia, right down to Eastern Europe. So if you think about frontier markets, Pakistan in specific, what are the things that either a founder, or when you look at it from a country perspective, you say that is an interesting what does the environment need to look like for you or an institutional investor to get excited about?
So there are some benefits and drawbacks to starting a company in Pakistan, but the benefits are that you can start by selling to the provincial, to your country.
Right.
You can start by building the thing for Pakistan only. And then you can grow it and improve it and then make it world class. So when you're getting that business started and that service started, you could even do a copycat business to something that seems to be working in the US or somewhere else and say, oh, okay, well, we're going to do that, but for Pakistan. And then you do it, and then it starts growing in Pakistan, and it takes on a life of its own. And there are new features and new benefits and things that aren't available on other products. This is what happened with WeChat. WeChat became the center of pretty much all economic activity and all communication and all information within China. And all they were trying to do was like copy the chat program that they saw from Israel and the US. And all of a sudden it took on all these other forms because it was relevant to China to do this or that. Pakistan can have the same effect. You start with something that's already out there and you build it for Pakistan, and then you can start adding features that no one else has ever seen. Or, the great thing is, you mentioned it yourself, that anywhere, you can start a business anywhere, and it can be world-class business. It can be a business that no one's thought of before.
Right.
Because we really all have access to the same information now.
Right.
And so if you have access to all the same information, you can project out and say, okay, 15 years from now, what's everybody going to be doing? What are they going to be thinking about? How are they going to be living their lives? What's that all going to look like? And then what's the product or service that's going to be really important? And I'd use 15 years because that's really how long it takes to get.
Sorry, can I ask, do you apply those fundamentals? So, if a Pakistani founder or a startup, I'm not inviting anything, but I'm just saying, like, if you saw those fundamentals, successful business in a sizable geography like Pakistan, 200 million population, digital natives, etc. Like that would be exciting for you as an experienced investor. Say that's worth looking at. Is that fair?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. We would definitely look at anything. We look at everything everyone sends to us. So anybody who has built a business, has a business plan, sends us a deck, we're going to evaluate it.
Appreciate it.
And we tend to look for things that haven't been done before and are controversial. There's something a little bit controversial about it. Where the 10 people in the room would argue,
right? Okay.
Like vehemently,
right? Okay.
Where one or two would be saying, "Oh my God, this changes everything," and 8 of them are saying, "Wait, we can't have this. This would be horrible," So we kind of there we're kind of looking for where minority opinion might be the thing that carries the day.
I'm gonna keep a note of that. We've got a couple of minutes. A common question most people would ask: have there been spaces or sectors where you thought, like that's just not for me? I know you look at everything, and I know one of the things I've always respected is you have been an eternal optimist and be able to. But have there been? Let me ask it a different way. Have there been either companies or sectors where you haven't invested and you said we probably should have? And second is there been at least a founder or a company where you're like, I had the opportunity and I didn't, and I regret it?
Well, I don't regret it too much when I make a mistake and I invest. The regrets are when I don't invest and they become big successes. And in those cases, those are the ones that really hurt. And it's in some cases I can blame myself. In some cases I can blame my partners. I can blame myself for I can blame my partners for keeping me out of Yahoo, where I brought it in, and he said, "Oh, they're just a couple of kids coming out of Stanford." And then I can blame them for Google, where I brought in Google, and they said, "Draper, we've already got 6 search engines. Why do we want another one?"
Never worked.
But then I can blame myself for Netflix, because I said, "Why are people gonna pay? You're gonna ship movies on DVDs through the US mail." I said, "In 2 years, we're going to be streaming all these things, and it's not." And he said, "Well, they're not ready for that yet." And I was thinking, yeah, but this business is horrible. Shipping through the mail and it's a horrible business. So huge mistake there. And then the other huge mistake was Reid Hoffman. So both Reids, Reid Hoffman, Reed Hastings. Reid Hoffman, because he came to me with LinkedIn, and I said, well, some of the people are going to really want this, who are, trying to reach those rich guys, and the rich guys aren't going to want to be on this thing because they don't want to get bombarded by people coming after their money. What I didn't realize was, jobs, all those things that are really important to everybody in the world. So I blew it on LinkedIn. So blew it on LinkedIn, blew it on Netflix. Things I've avoided. We were investors in clean tech before there was something called clean tech. But then when there was something called clean tech, we pulled away, and that was a good decision. And we were big investors in fintech before fintech was a thing, and we probably should have kept going on fintech, doubling down, because we were early. We figured it out. I backed Carta, I backed Robinhood, I backed Coinbase, I went after fintech in a big way, and we won big. But we could have kept doubling down. Like we knew that that was a change. I didn't realize how big it was, how big that industry was going to be. And I didn't really go big double down. And so I missed some things there. Now, what am I missing? God, I was doing a bunch of things with Sam Altman, but I didn't get involved in OpenAI. So stupid. I was talking to him about all the UBI stuff, and we had slightly different ways of looking at that. And what are the things? Now, I have avoided robotic investing for a long time.
Okay.
And now it might be time to start looking at it. Because what's happened with AI is it's gone from instruction-based, like control-based, to free association-based. So it's gone from expert system to neural network. And the neural network means they find things that nobody has thought about. And they will fill you in on things that you didn't really get. And that combined with a robot, now a robot is not just like I pick things up and put them down, I pick things up, I put them down, pick things up, put them down. Instead, a robot can be like, oh, are you sure you want that? We can do this instead because we did it over here and it worked better. So you're gonna start getting robots who can come up with better suggestions. And I think that in more of a general purpose robot, more actuators.
Consumer and industrial, you see that as a space where the telemetry, the kind of both the data and the kind of compute is now possible now in terms of the intelligence layer. Yeah. I think
it's going to make a difference.
I can see that.
So well, I think I covered that.
That's a whole swath, and very, very, very insightful. So really appreciate it. Tim, couldn't be more honored and thank you for your time. I know it's been super valuable for me to have had this opportunity to speak with you. I hope I probably bump into you at Bucks or somewhere else in the future. I probably won't be wearing a tie, but I'll remind you of it anyway. Wishing you and your
you've got submit pitch deck on the website. Don't go to pitch@dfj.com.
What's the best way?
I would go just tim@draper.vc. It's my email address.
Okay.
And you get a direct. So it's tim@draper.vc. I was looking at your chat thing over here.
We'll do that. We'll do that.
But make sure these are entrepreneurs from Pakistan who really have a passion and they're doing something quite extraordinary before they just come try to sell me, because we'll cut it off quickly if it isn't something that is really extraordinary. And generally what we're looking for is deep technology. So deep tech, entrepreneur, unusual, and 15 years from now, everyone's going to be doing it. And maybe it's a little controversial now.
Argumentative discussion. So I'll keep that in mind. Okay, fantastic. All right. Thank you very much, Tim. Really, really good to talk to you.
Great. You too. Bye-bye. Thanks, Yusuf.
Bye-bye.